Good afternoon and welcome to today's Tiger webinar. This series is a benefit for RIT alumni and an important part of keeping you moving forward in your professional and personal development. I'm Lydia Palmer, Senior Director of Marketing and Communications in RIT's Division of Development and Alumni Relations, and I am your moderator for today's webinar. Before we begin, let's take a moment to ensure that everyone is ready and familiar with the presentation tools. All participants in today's webinar have joined in mute mode and cannot be heard during the presentation. However, we absolutely encourage participation. To submit your questions at any time, please enter them in the chat box. The chat box can be opened by clicking on the chat icon at the right of your webinar window. We will make every effort to address all your comments and questions throughout the webinar. You are joining today's webinar using broadcast audio. If for any reason you wish to dial in by phone, dial-in information is provided in the chat box. Live captioning is also being provided during this webinar, and you can find the link to access that in the chat box as well. Note that today's webinar will be recorded and made available complete with captions in approximately 1 week following today's event. All participants will receive an email with the link to the recording. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to type those into the chat box as well, and we will do our best to get you the appropriate answers. And with that, let's get started. Today's webinar is Maximizing the Power of Your Data to Tell Your Story. We are joined by Joanne Ryan, an alumna from the class of 2008. Joanne holds a master's in health systems administration from RIT and brings 30-plus years of progressive leadership experience in the healthcare and social services arenas to her current role as co-founder and chief business development officer at Continual Care Solutions Incorporated. She has enjoyed demonstrated success in the areas of initiative, growth, creativity, focused leadership, partnerships, and collaboration. Previously, Joanne was the president and CEO of Volunteers of America, upstate New York. As a human service agency, VOA's mission is to empower people in the community to rise out of poverty and move towards self-reliance and reach their full potential. During her time at VOA, she successfully cultivated several community collaborative partnerships, resulting in the expansion of programs, services, and funding in areas such as early childhood education, building an on-site dental care for inner-city children, and expanding services to include housing with 60 units of low-income affordable housing for frail seniors. Following her time at VOA, Joanne provided strategic leadership and direction as the Senior Director of Corporate Relations for the Rochester Regional Health Foundation, where she was instrumental in cultivating and fostering strong philanthropic relationships throughout the community with corporations that care about the sustained growth of healthcare throughout the community served. At Continual Care Solutions, she has overseen development of an enterprise workflow software platform that partners with innovative community-based organizations that serve vulnerable and at-risk populations, including economically disadvantaged, intellectually and developmentally disabled, those with chronic and rare diseases, seniors, and other specialized populations. This powerful platform was designed specifically for not-for-profit agencies in the health and human service sector to improve workflow, cost capture, and data integration. The software helps organizations as they transition from a volume to value reimbursement environment. By harmonizing structured and unstructured data across disparate systems, these organizations achieve workflow optimization and automation through one single source of truth. In addition to her master's from RIT, Joanne has an associate degree in nursing from Monroe Community College and a bachelor's degree in gerontology from St. John Fisher. Welcome, Joanne. Our audience is all yours.
Thank you, Lydia, and thank you everyone for joining today. To add to that wonderful introduction, the reason for my current position started from a few conversations with a very talented software developer who was trying to look for his next wonderful opportunity. He is a very successful serial entrepreneur, if you will, and he thought he was retired as well. We got chatting one day, and some of this became it took on a life of its own by the nature of the needs that we were both identifying from two different avenues that were really in the not-for-profit space regarding technology and the challenges around having data that you can actually make actionable and make work for you. That resulted in conversations that followed that my chance to work with him in this capacity really has created this wonderful opportunity for me. And the real deficit that I was coming from was healthcare is so rich in all kinds of data, fingertip access, and it's data that you have a high degree of confidence in. In the not-for-profit space, there were so many disparate systems. The challenges around that really resulted in data that I didn't have a high degree of confidence in, or difficulty actually even mining it in the first place. Used to refer to that with my staff when I was at Volunteers of America as really living in Excel hell. Several different systems, maintaining them all was in of itself a challenge, and the opportunity for the staff to be doing what they loved most, which was interfacing with clients, was clearly affected by the number of hours that they had to spend in actually seeking data and having data work for them. So with that, I was asked to actually participate today and talk a little bit about how data can really tell your story. More importantly, if you have the ability to take data and mine it efficiently and mine it thoroughly, you can not only just tell your story, but you can prove your story. So the industry as we know it, and this is an industry that you are all participating in some capacity, is very large. And the challenges around that is this is where the heavy work is happening. There are over 300,000 not-for-profit organizations that are actually receiving tax dollars to help care for the individuals they're serving. There's about 146,000 in the health and human service aspect of care, 103,000 in the social and stability service of care, and almost 50,000 in network and association. Some of the industry lead areas are here. You may find yourself falling into one or several of them. What I found in my time in the not-for-profit space was really that our agency, much like many of my colleagues, was touching upon many of the key areas. It wasn't just an area serving those that were trying to move to self-sufficiency. There were also components of mental wellness or mental illness that were being addressed. The challenges around addiction, the challenges around homelessness, the challenges around just having a population that is frail or vulnerable. And because of that, because you're dealing with individuals who really are at risk and really very vulnerable, the need to have data that can help you make good strategic decisions about how to serve them best is really essential. And the industry as you know it, because you live it every day, and I knew it when I was there, and which was really the impetus for moving into trying to create this platform, is that it's changing. It is in tremendous transition at this time. In fact, the social service industry is $1 trillion business. And funders now want data that's going to not only help to demonstrate the return on investment, but also demonstrate the impact for not-for-profits. Additionally, 64% now of not-for-profit organizations have seen an increase in the demand for transparency in funding in the past 5 years. And this push is coming from the donor and the philanthropic side of your business. The challenge is now donors want to make sure that the investment's going right to the most effective place, and the return on that investment is something that they're seeking. The inability to really demonstrate that for your donors and your funders really puts the agencies at a great disadvantage. So showing impact, one of the things that we found through Continual Care Solution is a very deep dive with customer discovery. And we heard from our customers a very significant and very profound message. There were clearly pain points that each one of them were identifying and articulating. The challenges basically were around the ability to track and demonstrate their impact. 73% of not-for-profit organizations actually struggled with this ability to track. And additionally, 2/3 of them, if they could track it, the ability to actually demonstrate impact. We have a couple poll questions that I think might be just wonderful to have your feedback on. And if we could put the first poll question up, that would be great.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me jump in here just because we're working on a few things here. So it's the very first one. How difficult? Okay, so as you should be seeing on your screen, the first poll question, which is how difficult is it for your organization to demonstrate its impact? And we got a choice of easy, moderate, difficult, or very difficult. So if you have a moment and can select from those choices, we'll get a sense of what some of the struggles are that all of you are having. We're getting everything from moderately easy to difficult. trending more toward the difficult. So it sounds like they're all sort of right in your sweet spot.
So the wonderful thing that I know and that all of you know is that your work is very powerful. It's very important, and that you are having tremendous impact. The challenge and disconnect is being able to take that information and share that with your donors, your funders, and your regulators. So the fact that many of you are already identifying the fact that it's moderate to difficult just again reestablishes the challenges that we're facing today in this space. Most of that has been because most of the technology that's out there is either extremely expensive or it's not designed for the not-for-profit world, the community-based organizations. Additionally, another key challenge is that the software that is available creates yet one more silo. So it's really essential to have integration be part of your platform as well. And we'll move right on to the next poll question.
Okay, and our second poll question, some of you are jumping in ahead of us, which is good. How difficult is it for your organization to analyze the data you are collecting? Easy, moderately easy, difficult, or very difficult? We've got someone who said, oh, I'm sorry, and then we've got two other options, which are we are collecting data but not analyzing it. That's always a good one. And we are not collecting data or analyzing it at all. So we're getting trending toward difficult with a few people saying we're collecting, but maybe we don't know what to do with it, or we just can't figure out how to get the analysis done.
Yeah, and again, you know, it's a shared area of concern and a shared area of difficulty that we found with the research that we are citing as well. And again, the data is there. It might be in multiple systems. It might not have that link together. And that's really where it becomes a powerhouse for you to take the data and be able to put it in one single source of truth. So to demonstrate impact really comes from the fact that you take your data and you can actually mine it in a way that helps you to then in turn tell your story. And I think we'll move to the final poll question as well.
And then our final poll question, thank you, is how difficult is it for your organization to actually collect the data? Easy, moderately easy, difficult, or very difficult? So you seem to be getting somewhere between moderately easy and difficult with people. So it sounds like maybe they have some systems up to collect data.
Probably, exactly. I think that's what we're hearing as well. And thank you all for participating. Again, it really helps to us all of us to focus on, you know, how do we help to make this part of our work easier? Again, the desire to be in this space, to serve at this capacity, means that we care greatly about these missions. And caring about those missions gets actually really, what makes us all feel good about that is interfacing with the client and not struggling with trying to make the technology work for us. It should work for us. We shouldn't work for it. So again, tracking and analyzing the things that we have touched upon, and certainly what the polls have demonstrated for this audience is that the key areas that can be greatly impacted are, as you see here, risk reduction is one of the key things. Again, with multiple comorbidities, with a highly vulnerable population, situations can be individual situations, or you can have systemic situations that you are trying to be aware of and improve. And the ability to manage that well with multiple disparate systems becomes even a greater challenge. The ability to increase funding, the opportunity to make sure that the good work you're doing gets told in the stories so that you can take that information and apply that into a grant, which will strengthen the opportunity for it being awarded. Navigating managed care changes. For many of you, value-based payment is something that is certainly on the horizon for all of us. But if you are now being reimbursed through any of the governmental systems, the ability to take your work and demonstrate that in data results in you being paid for that. We know that money is being left on the table. Many of the services that are being provided are just part of the good work that you do. And the inability to track that, it ends up being really a deficit at the end of the day. And then, of course, gaining recognition and impact for your work. Once again, telling your story with data is powerful, but actually proving your story with data is very impactful. So again, as we look at this further, we're realizing that 59%, which really kind of falls pretty much in line with our own poll here, of not-for-profit leaders really say that the confidence that they have in technology to have it show and demonstrate impactful measurement is really That's 59% versus what we would all like to see as a higher percent. Additionally, 48% of not-for-profit leaders are not even confident in the degree of ability to take that data and really stand behind it from a confidence perspective. So there are steps that can be recommended, and I'm sure many of you are already thinking about how to close that gap regarding making data work for you and not against you. Investing in technology. This is something, again, that one of the pieces of advice that would be offered certainly is, as you're doing your due diligence, just to be sure that you're not purchasing another piece of software that's going to create another silo. If it becomes yet one more disparate system, it doesn't give you the full lens that you need to have a 360 look for your client. The ability to establish performance metrics that are agreed upon, that are driven by your mission, is really important. What is important to your mission? Figuring that out first from the regard of what you want to measure and how those measurements then can be applied strategically to decision making. The third is building collaboration actually into the process. The ability to have the entire organization viewed as a whole versus segmented by department is another key thing to helping data work on your behalf. And then hiring personnel that have the analytic skills. And what we found as well with many of our clients that we're working with now, there were truly gems to be mined within their agencies as well. Having the right technology can really give somebody the opportunity to show you and demonstrate talents that really were yet to surface. The ability to have ease of data can really help individuals to really do the very best they can and perform at the highest level. And the fifth one is committing to having the whole organization focus on the ongoing data analysis. It has to start from the top down, and the ability to have leadership recognize this and have this be an investment going forward really makes a big impact as well. So if you can prove what you're doing, and you can do that with data, you can replicate what you're doing. And by replicating, you can take that success from one client to the next, and that will result in scaling. So part of what we hear from our clients as well is the ability to make sure that they know the need is out there, demonstrating the capacity that they have and advancing that further into their communities. And that is, of course, one of the best outcomes from the scalability is you're doing great work, and now you're doing great work with a larger amount of folks that are benefiting from that work. So we can take, I believe, some questions.
Sure. Please feel free to go ahead and enter your questions in the chat box if you have any. We do have one to start out. Joanne, from your experience as a nonprofit leader, what do you find is the biggest hurdle keeping leaders from investing in this type of data collection and analysis? Is it staffing questions? Is it it's not our core business? What are you finding is difficult?
What I found when I was at Volunteers of America was the data was out there. It just was our ability to process it. It also was our ability to have the staff understand the value of it, because culturally, what I found when I left healthcare and went into the not-for-profit space was we were using data to actually appease regulators, funders, and donors. We weren't using it to make good strategic decisions. So it's almost a paradigm shift of how you see data and how you use data. And the ability to have that be the actual becomes now, this is the baseline for how we're going to operate. There's change management involved. It's not an easy thing to do. But when you have a good tool, you have the opportunity to then have that work for you. And again, working smarter and not harder.
Okay. Can you speak a little bit from your experience about the nature of the disparate systems that you find in, and I'm going to add a little bit here, I think it's both in nonprofit organizations and for-profit organizations.
Absolutely. Many of the disparate systems come from the fact that certain regulators mandate a particular reporting structure. So that is without a doubt one of the challenges that we're facing in this space as well. Having a tool that can then have an import or an API that can create a mechanism to feed those reports through that platform is essential. The other area is of challenge around disparate systems is that because there really isn't anything out there that's designed for the community-based organization, we're making obviously inroads to do that. It has resulted in Excel spreadsheets. That's how people manage their day. They manage their workflow. They track their outcomes. But if you think about that, when you're working from one Excel spreadsheet, it's one lens of that individual client versus having a 360 of that client. And that's one of the things that Continual Care Solutions has done is we have taken and given you one lens for your clients so that you can best serve them.
And do you find that the situation or the challenge is different depending on the size of the agency? Obviously, there's some large size community service organizations. There's small, 3-4 person organizations. Are the difficulties different?
I think the difficulties really are more about the number of services and programs that are being delivered. Everyone has sort of the same core underpinning of challenges by the nature of clients are vulnerable. They're in a state of chaos when they come to you. You're trying to stabilize them and get them to be sufficient or healthier in some capacity. That's sort of universal. The challenge is how many opportunities can you provide them from a service or a program perspective? And are those services and programs housed within your organization, or are you using community relationships to also serve that individual? The network that happens bidirectionally as a result of caring for a vulnerable population is significant. The inability to have good command for what that client needs and have they progressed, and can you assess that progression or that decline in a way that helps you to make the next decision more impactful.
And obviously your client examples are proprietary, and we don't want you to reveal any specific information, but do you have some examples of when someone was able to do a really great job of synthesizing this data and producing a terrific result?
Yeah, actually, a couple of our clients, just simply identifying how many they're serving, how many clients they're serving. Again, if you've got multiple sources, that number is always in play. And we had one customer that when we first started working with them, they thought that they were serving 9,000 individuals. After we took their data and we cleaned it and we gave it back to them, they actually were serving 5,000 individuals. The reason was there were so many duplications within the system because that individual was receiving services from multiple avenues within their agency. The ability to have good data that you have a high degree of confidence is one key area. The other one was the ability to know that is that individual improving? And anecdotally, we're no longer the luxury of having just the volume that we serve versus the value we actually can impact with is clearly a challenge from a reimbursement perspective. So what are the tools that are used? What are the metrics used to assess where that individual is today and where you're hoping to move them to tomorrow?
And do you find that your data is beneficial when you speak of it around funding? I'm going to speak from the perspective of someone who works in a development organization. Do you find valuable data for nonprofit leaders to then go out and share from a donor and a resource gathering perspective?
Absolutely, Lydia. One of the things that we're finding, and we're hearing this from customers, and I remember it when I was in this space as well, you will oftentimes find that the individual you're serving has an ecosystem around them, and that ecosystem could be very much a grateful family or a grateful relationship. And in some way, they'd like to participate in the success of your organization. The ability to have a single central data repository that can not only tell you the client, but the relationship to the individuals in their world gives you a chance to cultivate them from a donor perspective. And the ability to have a grateful patient or a grateful family member step into the light of participating through your events or donations directly is really a tremendous gift that they can give back.
Terrific. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Joanne. We really do appreciate it, and we hope our audience found this very useful. If anyone has any additional questions, they can be emailed to tigerwebinars@rit.edu, and we will direct your questions to Joanne. Note that all of the participants today will receive an email from us in about a week with a link to today's webinar recording. Thanks to Joanne for sharing your knowledge with our alumni today. And we want to remind all of our Tiger alumni that your gifts to RIT are helping today's students achieve their dreams and also raising RIT's national reputation. If you have not yet made your annual gift to the Fund for RIT, please visit rit.edu/make-a-gift and select an area of the university that matters to you. And please join us Tuesday, March 10th, for our next Tiger webinar, the latest and greatest stories from the world of cybersecurity. We will welcome back Professor Jonathan Weissman, who will discuss some of the incredible stories from dozens of cybersecurity-related articles that he shares with his students and alumni each week. He will tell the story of the fish tank that caused a major cybersecurity breach, which is really interesting. After his first successful webinar from last July, this is certainly a must attend for all alumni, not just cybersecurity pros. Thank you all again for joining us today. Please exit the webinar by simply closing your Livestorm window. And please do let us know what you thought of the webinar through a brief survey that you will receive via email. Have a great day.